Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the botany classes. It's been a long time, right? After a long gap, after some 5 6 days, I'm making the video again for you. So, this is fourth part of mineral nutrition. Already, we learned about the minerals, why they are important, and what are the minerals, what happens to the minerals when they are high or low. So, we learn all those things. Now, in today's class, I'm going to teach you about nitrogen nutrition. Out of all these minerals, nitrogen is believed to be the very important mineral because of some reasons. Nitrogen is the one which is forming the food production or which is determining the food production in that particular environment or ecosystem. Have you ever heard of that? It is a fact. Nitrogen is the one which determines the sustenance of an ecosystem. So, that much important nitrogen is. When nitrogen is missing, it would immediately affect the growth of a plant. So, directly it would affect the ecosystem's food production. When nitrogen is high, that will go toxic. So, nitrogen is actually a very important element. That's why we are going to learn about nitrogen in detail. So this nitrogen, as we all know, it's available in huge amount in the atmosphere itself. Nearly some 78% of free atmospheric air combines it's composed of nitrogen. But still, this nitrogen cannot be utilized by the plant or animals directly as like how we are breathing carbon or oxygen. How we are taking in carbon or oxygen. You wonder, are we taking carbon? Yes, we are taking carbon too, right? The carbon can go accumulate, or as ion get accumulated in the hemoglobin in the form of like carbon dioxide can accumulate or carbon monoxide can get accumulate. You learn about that in your lower classes too. So this in this form, this high content of nitrogen which is available in the free air, it won't be get combined with our cells generally. Okay, but when it is in a higher composition, in a very high composition, sometimes this nitrogen go combine with our blood cells too. We will learn about that in a little bit later. Before that, we need to go with the benefits thing or beneficial thing about the nitrogen. So this nitrogen, when this nitrogen is the major component, and as it is the major thing to form the DNA or nucleic acids, or it is the growth regulator, it is the thing major element found in the vitamins, found in most of the organic structures like the basic element for our metabolism. So this nitrogen is very essential, and this nitrogen is we can get the nitrogen only from the plants. Then how do these plants avail nitrogen? The plants will take up nitrogen in the form of nitrate or nitrite or ammonium ions. Only in these three forms, you know that they are the fixed forms. Nitrate, nitrite, or the form of nitrogen with oxygen. Ammonium is with hydrogen. So this nitrogen, when it is fixed with some other element, when it is converted into a compound or into an ionic compound, then this nitrogen can be utilized by the plants, and this will go incorporate into the plants nucleic acid or proteins or amino acids, or it is going into the vitamins, or it's going into the growth regulator. Then the plant will be doing good, the plant will be growing good, the plant will be doing all the metabolism of the plant will be in a better way. So that's how nitrogen, that's why nitrogen is so important, and that's how nitrogen makes its importance in the plant. And organisms like animals like us, we will be taking in nitrogen through plants. We can't take nitrogen directly from soil as like how plants do, or we can't take nitrogen directly from atmosphere too. So we purely depend on the microorganisms. These microorganisms can either be symbiotic or asymbiotic. So what is this symbiotic? Symbiotic in sense they are mutually connected. The some of the microorganisms will be doing nitrogen fixation, and these microorganisms used to reside inside the plants in higher plants. For example, the very common known example is leguminous plant. Leguminous plant, the best example for that is the green pea. Okay, the pea, beans, so all those, that's a family. Leguminous is a group of family members of a plant. So leguminous plants generally inhabit this symbiotic nitrogen fixers. So symbiosis is a kind of relationship. You know that. You have studied about that in your lower classes. So symbiotic relationship is established by some microorganisms with higher plants. So what these microorganisms used to do, they'll be fixing atmospheric nitrogen in soil or in the plant's root nodules. Instead, they will be getting nutrient from the plant. So the microorganisms will be providing nitrogen instead of fertilizers. So in that kind of plants, we don't want to provide nitrogen fertilizers. We don't want to provide nitrogen manually or artificially. Basically, they have it with them. And these microorganisms will derive nutrient from the plants. So that is symbiotic nitrogen fixation. And the other one is asymbiotic microorganisms. They are free living microorganisms found on the soil or found in the soil. And these microorganisms will fix atmospheric nitrogen in the form of nitrate, nitrite or ammonium. And they will be utilizing that nitrate, nitrate and ammonium for their metabolism. So they are asymbiotic microorganisms. So they are not with a symbiotic relationship, but still they will be doing the fixation of nitrogen. So these are the two different kind in rough. Okay, we are going to learn 5 different kind of microorganisms in this category, but still this is a rough division of the nitrogen fixers. And the little bit of amount, apart from this biological nitrogen fixation, a little bit of nitrogen is being fixed in the atmosphere or from the atmosphere in the soil by industrial process or by lightning, or sometimes it happens by the huge electric discharge. So there are some chances, like accidentally sometimes nitrogen can be fixed, but that is a negligible amount of nitrogen fixation. What is happening throughout the world or throughout the biosphere by means of microorganisms is so huge when compared with this accidental fixation or chemical fixation by the or in the industries. So there is a very little or negligible amount. And now we need to learn the 5 different microorganisms which are helpful in this nitrogen metabolism or nitrogen nutrition in plants. So these are the group of microorganisms. Okay, each and every type is a group. So there are some group of nitrogen fixing microbes found in the atmosphere. So this nitrogen fixing microbes will be fixing the atmospheric nitrogen, free nitrogen in the form of nitrate or nitrite, or sometimes ammonium too. So this is nitrogen fixing microbes, and here we can say that some of the nitrogen fixing microbes are symbiotic and some are asymbiotic. And the second kind of microorganisms involved in this nitrogen metabolism is putrefying microbes. You can say this as putrefying or putrefying. Okay, so the pronunciation may differ, but putrefying is the one which is American slang, I guess. So putrefying microbes. These putrefying microbes generally found, they are the free living microorganisms. Mostly putrefying microorganisms would be fungi. And these microorganisms are found commonly in soil. And these microorganisms used to break down the proteins found in the debris of plant or animal waste. And this protein will be converted back into ammonium. So this is a kind of reversal effect. And this ammonium will later be taken up by the plant. So putrefying microbes is also very important. This is a kind of decomposing organisms, kind of. And then the third type or third kind is nitrite microbes. So this nitrite microbes will convert atmospheric nitrogen, free nitrogen, into nitrite. There are so many examples, and these nitrite microbes are so important. Okay. The examples for these nitrite microbes are Nitrosomonas. I'm stressing this Nitrosomonas because Nitromonas is another one. Nitrosomonas and Nitrosospira, Nitrosococcus and Nitrosolobus. These are the different examples for nitrite microbes. So I'm stressing on that nitroso. So that is for the group which is commonly nitrite microbe. And the next kind is nitrate microbe, which will be producing nitrate out of nitrite. Okay, so these are the nitrate producing microbes. And the best example for this nitrate microbes are Nitrobacter, Nitrococcus. Now you can check that Nitrococcus. Here it is Nitrosococcus. So here it's Nitrococcus, Nitrobacter, Nitrospira, Nitrocystis are the common example for this, and which will be converting nitrite into nitrate. And the last category is denitrifying microbes. So these denitrifying microbes are actually a kind of decomposer again, as like putrefying bacteria, putrefying microbes, because fungi are the most. And this denitrifying microorganisms generally used to be releasing the nitrogen from the organic part, from the organisms. It will be releasing the nitrogen and it will move it into the atmosphere back as the free form of nitrogen. So that's what the work of denitrifying microbes. The best common example for denitrifying microbes are Thiobacillus and Pseudomonas denitrificans. Okay, so the name suggests that it's a denitrifying bacteria or denitrifying microorganisms. And this nitrogen cycle has to be a perfect cycle, or it is a perfect cycle when this nitrogen is moving into the organism from atmosphere. It gets incorporated in the organism's living structure. Like nucleic acid, I gave you a lot of example where does it will go and get incorporated. And then so from the organism's part, it will be going out of the organism when the denitrifying microbes work on that. So this makes the nitrogen cycle a perfect one or a complete one. And now we need to discuss about why does this nitrogen cycle is very important. As I said a little before, when nitrogen gets stagnated in an organism, it causes a severe toxic effect. Already you have studied about eutrophication and you know about algal bloom, right? I guess you know that algal bloom is the immediate production of algae, or the sudden huge production of algae in a particular aquatic system, like pond or river or lake, which makes the aquatic ecosystem into a complete horrific one, because the organisms in that aquatic system may not survive because of too much algae production, and the rate of photosynthesis will go wrong, it would affect the balance of that ecosystem. So algal bloom is actually a very dangerous one. And the same kind eutrophication is also the another impact of algal bloom, or another dimension of algal bloom. In eutrophication we used to discuss about the nutrient depletion and also about the nutrient quality of that ecosystem. That's what we are focusing when we are discussing about eutrophication. So at the time of eutrophication, we need to think about what is happening to the oxygen quality of that water ecosystem, or what is happening to the chemical concentration of that water. So you can guess that the chemical concentration of that ecosystem, of that water ecosystem, will go completely wrong. Oxygen will go completely depleted, and the presence of nitrogen and carbon and hydrogen will be so high in there. So organic compound formation or organic compound multiplication will occur in that water ecosystem, which will be resulting to higher COD and low BOD, that is chemical oxygen depletion and biological oxygen depletion rate would go differ, which will completely affect the entire ecosystem, unfit for the organisms. So that is what the major impact. So this thing already you have studied, or you heard about this already. One more important thing that most of the people doesn't know about, a lot of you may know because you are reading too much of articles and you are reading too much of journals, but still there are people who doesn't know about that, is blue baby syndrome, or that's technically termed as methemoglobinemia or methemoglobinemia. Okay, I'm feeling struggle to say that, methemoglobinemia. Yes, so that is what the blue baby syndrome, very simple, we can call that. Instead of breaking our tongue, we can say that is blue baby syndrome, because this is very common in babies. It would affect adults too. So what is happening when this blue baby syndrome or blue skin syndrome is there for people? The blood or the RBC cells will combine with this nitrogen, and because of this nitrogen's affinity, the RBC's iron gets completely oxidized, and which makes Fe2 plus ion into Fe3 plus ion, and which results in the production of dark chocolate brown colored blood. Can you guess that? The blood, which has to be in dark red, will be turning into dark chocolate brown color. So you may feel like, wow, it's good, but it's not good. The entire skin will go turn into blue color, which is actually a toxic one. This nitrogen, when nitrogen is accumulated, start accumulating in the RBC cells, which will trigger up the oxidation of iron. And this iron, as the iron is so highly affinity, shows affinity towards the iron molecule, the iron molecule found in the RBC hemoglobin will get oxidized, will change into Fe3 plus ion, and this ion will never release oxygen, and it will not be supplying oxygen enough to the muscle cells, so that the muscles will not work proper. Muscle coordination will go completely wrong. So that is what the blue baby syndrome is. The skin will go turn completely bluish, and so there are so many other problems too, like nervous system will not work proper. Muscles will be the one which will be showing that immediately. So there are so many trouble for that, trouble connected with that. So that's one best example for the trouble connected with the nitrogen toxicity, apart from algal bloom and eutrophication, which we know from our childhood. That is, as it is an ecosystem, we are learning about that. Now you are in class 11, so you need to know what happens to that when it enters in our body, when it happens in our body too. And then we need to know about, so this one is actually a 5-mark question. This 5 different kind of microorganism is a 5-mark question. And the next 5-mark question is about nitrogen cycle. So you need to know the nitrogen cycle. What happens when nitrogen is accommodated into an organism, and how does this comes out? So nitrogen gas, by means of nitrogen fixation, it would be converted into organic nitrogen, and by ammonification process it will be converted into ammonia, or the nitrogen gas by industrial ways, or by using fertilizer manufacturing methods or industrial fixation methods, ammonium is also being produced there. And then nitrification microorganisms will work on ammonia, will be producing the nitrite and nitrate, and this nitrate is actually, it can go into the organism. By the process of denitrification, this will be released out, and the nitrogen is coming out, or nitrogen gas, or sometimes nitrous oxide is also being released with the help of microbes. So that will also be available in the atmosphere. Now you think about nitrous oxide. What do you know about nitrous oxide? Yes. So this is the laughing gas. Yes. So this is the next 5-mark question here. Nitrogen cycle. So you have to learn this cycle. You can get a copy of this because you have nitrogen cycle picture in your book, which is a little bit complicated. So better you can go with this one. You can write this too. So this is a 5-mark question, second 5-mark question of this particular part. Okay. Yeah, I took a break in between. Right. So the next thing that we are going to learn is mechanism of nitrogen fixation. So this mechanism of nitrogen fixation purely talks about how does this nitrogen fixation occurs in organisms. We are saying that symbiotic organisms. So this is about purely symbiotic nitrogen fixation. So this symbiotic nitrogen fixation, maybe you have seen that in some plants or in some organisms, like the plants which fix the atmospheric nitrogen will be showing this root nodule will be formed. Sorry for that. Yeah. So root nodule will be formed in these organisms. So what is this root nodule? How does this look like? This root nodules will be a small notch-like structure which will be found on the root hairs. That is what root nodule. So this root nodule formation is actually by a group of microorganisms, nitrogen fixing microorganisms. They are termed as, one best known example for that is rhizobium, but there is a collective term for all these nitrogen fixing microorganisms, that is diazotrophs. Diazotrophs. Okay, diazotrophs. DIAZATROPHS, diazotrophs. So this diazotrophs are the nitrogen fixing microorganisms. So in that, one best known example is rhizobium. So this rhizobium and leguminous plants generally used to get combined, and this leguminous plants root they will be producing the nodule. That is what biological nitrogen fixation, and we are going to learn how it happens exactly. So the rhizobium will be producing a nitrogenase complex. Rhizobium microorganism will be producing nitrogenase complex. As the name can tell you, this is a kind of enzyme. So this nitrogenase complex is having a reductase and a nitrogenase. Reductase and nitrogenase. And this reductase is responsible for reduction reaction. This reduction reaction first starts with oxidation of carbohydrate, because we are learning about the reduction of nitrogen. Okay, for that it requires some amount of energy. From where this energy is released? Oxidation of carbohydrate is the one which will basically release energy. So oxidation of carbohydrate is triggered by this reductase enzyme, and this will be releasing some amount of energy, electrons, and this electrons will be having high reducing power, and that electron will be moved into the nitrogenase, which will make the nitrogenase active. These electrons will move to the nitrogenase, which will be making nitrogenase active. This nitrogenase will convert nitrogen into ammonium compounds, ammonium nitrate, nitrite, or ammonia. This will be converting into its reduced form. Okay, so that is what the basic work behind, and this is carrying a 5 mark. Okay, you have to read this, and this will be carrying 5 mark to you. So mechanism of nitrogen fixation in organism is by nodule formation, and nodule will be formed by the rhizobium, and which will be forming on leguminous plants. And the rhizobium is having nitrogenase complex. Nitrogenase complex is of two different things, reductase and nitrogenase. And reductase is responsible for release of electrons by oxidation of carbohydrate, which will be having high reducing power. And these electrons will be moving to the nitrogenase enzyme complex, which will be reducing the nitrogen to ammonia ion or ammonia. Okay, so that is what the mechanism of nitrogen fixation. If you go in detail into it, this nitrogen fixing organisms used to get attached onto the surface of root. You just imagine when I am telling you that. I'll search if there is any videos for that, I'll attach to you, but I can't incorporate that into this video, so I'll be attaching it separately. So this nitrogen fixing microorganisms used to go attach on the surface, or like they are get absorbed on the surface of root hair. When they are absorbed on the surface of root hair, this root hair starts to show curling up. They will curl up, and then this, yeah, I'll try to draw a picture. I couldn't. Here you can see that the root hair, this nitrogen fixing microorganisms, this yellow thing is nitrogen fixing microorganisms, which will be found attached on the surface of this nitrogen fixing nitrogen leguminous plants. And when they are absorbed onto the surface, then we can see that these plants will be showing a curling up process. It will be curled up. The root hair will curl up onto the microorganisms, and which will be producing a close relationship between the organisms and the root. And later these microorganisms will be producing a thread-like structure. The thread will go into the plant up to their cortex region, sometimes up to their inner vascular tissue region, and then through them the plant will be providing food through this thread-like contraction or to the thread-like connection, which is established between the microorganisms and the root. They will exchange the nutrients. The microorganisms will be providing nitrogen, and then these plants will be providing carbohydrate. Okay, for the fixation, this carbohydrate will be provided by the plant. Okay, so this is how. And how does this nodule be formed? These roots, they are getting covered over this microorganism. These microorganisms start to produce their own colonies there, and above all these colonies, these microorganisms will be this plant root will be completely covering the microorganisms colony, so that we can see that it would be producing lot of cleft like tissues which will be of nitrogen fixing cells. So this is what nodule. So this structure is called nodule. Okay, so this is nodule, right? So this is what biological nitrogen fixation. The next important topic is about leg hemoglobin. So this leg hemoglobin is, leg is for legume, hemoglobin is for hemoglobin, the content like heme and globin protein. So what is this leg hemoglobin? Why do this leg hemoglobin present? Why this is present in the plant? So the answer for that is, this nitrogenase complex is actually nitrogenase complex. Just now we discussed about that. This nitrogenase complex is actually highly sensitive to oxygen. If oxygen is present there, this nitrogenase complex cannot work. It cannot do the function as it is. It will go combined with the oxygen. So basically these plants are being protected from this. They naturally they have such a structure like leg hemoglobin structure is present, and this leg hemoglobin, we all know that hemoglobin is having high affinity towards oxygen. So this leg hemoglobin will be combining with oxygen, and so that the free oxygen concentration in that cells will be very less, so the nitrogenase complex will be working proper. Okay, so that is what the idea behind. And leg hemoglobin, it's found only in leguminous plants. Hemoglobin kind of structure as like in animal cells. This hemoglobin is having heme part and globin part, and the globin part here is contributed by the plant. The globin protein part is contributed by the plant, and the heme is produced by the rhizobium. Heme or iron part is produced by the rhizobium, and as it is found only in leguminous plants, we call them as leg hemoglobin. The same sort of structure, the same protein structure as like human hemoglobin or animal hemoglobin. And because of the presence of this hemoglobin, if you take a cross section of these root nodules, it would be so pinkish in color. And this pinkishness is enriched when the hemoglobin content is high in that root nodules, and it's believed that the one which is having high pink color will be having high nitrogen content. And this is because of presence of a gene called nitrogen fixing gene or NIF gene, the presence of this like hemoglobin, and the presence of hemoglobin or heme production. Rhizobium and also leguminous plants will be contributing for the production of NIF gene. And two elements are necessary for this leg hemoglobin production and also the function, nitrogen fixation. They are molybdenum and cobalt. So this cobalt is actually a major compound in vitamin B, that is vitamin B12, especially cyanocobalamin. So this cobalt, and also the B2 is also having this cobalt in a high amount. So this vitamin complex, vitamin B complex, is contributing too much for the production of this, for this nitrogen fixing process. And this molybdenum is responsible for the sustenance of a coenzyme for this nitrogen fixing process, complete process. So here you have to learn about leg hemoglobin. Leg hemoglobin is also a very commonly asked question here in this particular part. So you need to know what is leg hemoglobin, and how do this complex is making this nitrogen fixing process complete, successful, and what are the elements required, and what is the gene responsible for that. And these are the energy components which are providing energy in this entire process. NADPH2, FADH2 and ATP are being supplied by various processes, by various enzymes to make this process successful. So that's it about this biological nitrogen fixation. So your homework, we have completed this lesson. By mineral nutrition lesson is over. As I said first itself, you are expected to learn 5 different 5-mark questions from this particular part. The first one is about the 5 different kind of bacteria or microorganisms, and then about nitrogen cycle, and then mechanism of biological nitrogen fixation, the third 5-mark question. And then you have to learn about leg hemoglobin, and you have to read about this denitrification, and also I already taught you about that denitrification process. and also the nitrogen assimilation in plants, because if I say that, it would be like the same thing I'm saying it again and again. I guess I have said about that. So you guys has to read this entire pages. In my book it is about 3 page, from page number 611 to 615. So this is in my book, maybe in your book it would differ. So nearly some 2-3 pages are there. So this is your homework. You have to read this 3 pages completely, and make sure you are learning all 5 mark questions before your next unit test or before your next test. So this next week by our Zoom meet, I will tell you the date. Next week by Friday, most probably I will be conducting a slip test out of this 5 mark questions. All these 5 mark is the portion to learn. So that is your homework today. You have to learn this entire 3 pages. Within one day you can't learn that, I know. So I'll be giving you 2-3 days time to learn that 5 mark questions completely. Okay, I know today's class is too lengthy, but I have to complete the portion. That's why today I have completed mineral nutrition. So please go with your homework. Okay, so that's it kids, that's it for today's class. Thank you so much those who are listening completely. Thank you so much. If you couldn't listen to it, I need you to take a break in between, and you can watch the video again, and make sure you are completing the portion on time. Okay, thank you kids, stay safe.